I really didn't want to see myself. That's okay. Good morning again. I would like, with the greatest of pleasure, to introduce Robert Vidrine, give you a little bit of his history. Robert was born in Cholula, Mexico, where his father was teaching philosophy. And following his parents' divorce, his mom moved Robert and his brother William to Houston. And they spent several years there and eventually settling in Western North Carolina when he was 10. He later attended Guilford College, where he majored in anthropology and sociology. Yes, I thought that same thing, Mary. A few years after graduating, Robert began his career at Wake Forest, where he still works as an instructional technologist for the education and counseling departments. I call him one of my best techies. Although he has attended Winston-Salem Friends Meeting for close to 15 years, Robert joined just recently as a member, and in 2023, and he and his beloved wife, Crystal, were married under the care of Winston-Salem Friends Meeting. And of course, we know that Cheryl Bridges conducted the service, even though it was kind of half Quaker and half traditional. I love that. It was a beautiful, beautiful wedding, and their second anniversary, just at the beginning of the month. While it took a spiritual journey to arrive here today, Robert is proud to call himself a Quaker, and I am proud to call him my friend. Capital F, small f.
My cheat sheet.
Have to have it.
Ready to go? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm really grateful to be here with everybody today. This is the first time that I'm ever delivering a message. So you detect a little nervousness here and there. Hopefully I've practiced most of that out. But over the years, I've received many messages. This is just the first one that I'm sharing with all of you. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's a real gift for me to be here with you this morning. So I was not always a Quaker. I had to go on a bit of a spiritual journey to arrive at Quakerism and at this meeting. And while I may not be the most active in the Quaker community, and I certainly am not the most knowledgeable about Quaker history, and my knowledge of Scripture, let's just say, needs improvement. But hopefully, in this tale of my spiritual journey, you'll find something familiar, maybe even something a little useful. So, growing up in a small town in North Carolina, my mother took my brother and me to the Episcopal Church when we went to church. We were never the most active people in the church, but I always knew that it was important to my mother that my brother and I have a spiritual education, that we learn about the teachings of Jesus Christ, and that we had a firm foundation in the values and morals that were important. Unfortunately, at a young age, my perspective on the church was usually more along the lines of how to get out of it. I realized very quickly that my mom really didn't like to show up to church very late. So if I dragged my feet getting ready in the morning, I might just earn a free lazy Sunday instead of an early morning church service. But over the years, the reason for why I had to go to church, morphed from because I said so to encouraging us to appreciate the collective, collaborative works that can be performed when you're in concert with others, the fellowship, the connection to the community, and other things. There were some times in that church when I truly felt a connection similar to the scene that many of you have probably seen in the movie The Blues Brothers, where Juliet Jake is in a church service and sees a yellow beam of light coming down from the heavens and illuminating his face, and he realizes that the way to save the orphanage he and his brother grew up in was to get the band back together. Well, I didn't get the band back together. I didn't form a band, and I'm not on a mission from God that I know of, at least not one specific one. But there were times here and there that I felt a bit of the divine. Unfortunately, those times were fleeting. There were moments where I saw people that I thought of as very good church people in the church acting in ways that I didn't really think led me down the right path. I thought those were not really the way they should be acting. Maybe these were not the people that I should be following into a style of worship that I often found confusing and ceremonial. During this time, I even spent a little bit of time as an acolyte. I showed up early to the services and put on the special robe and grabbed the long pole. We used to light the candles all around the chapel. But ultimately, a lot of that service really confused me, and I found myself asking questions like, does it really matter to God if I stand during certain parts of the service and I sit during other parts and I kneel during still other parts? It's really important to my spiritual upbringing that I know when the preacher says this thing, you're supposed to respond in this way. And just a lot of the aspects of the church service kind of didn't seem to match real well with me. It felt like it distracted me from a true spiritual connection. Then I turned 18 and I realized, hey, I'm an adult. I can actually choose what religion I am. This is up to me, which kind of opened up a whole new pathway for me. While I was on this spiritual journey, my father was also on a similar spiritual journey. He was raised in the Baptist church, and while my brother and I were visiting him in the summers, we attended several different Baptist church services with him. And none of them quite fit the bill. Somewhere in there, my father discovered the Baton Rouge Friends meeting. And almost instantly, he found his spiritual home. The values that they espoused, the projects that they involved themselves in, all seemed to be very aligned with how he felt and how he believed. And during this time, I attended several meetings for worship with him. They were all unprogrammed. So I learned, mostly, how to stay awake through the entire unprogrammed service. Learning a little bit along the way of how to worship in the manner of friends. But I saw within a lot of the other members of the meeting devotion and a commitment, a seemingly full-time commitment to spirituality and righteousness, and I felt a little intimidated, more than a little intimidated. I wasn't sure, could I be a Quaker? This felt good to be in the meeting. I believed what they believed generally. It seemed very warm and welcoming, but I wasn't really sure that I could clear that bar, so to speak. So at 18, I went off to college, and I really aimed only at one place. I aimed only at Guilford College. Brother already attended there, and I had visited him and found it very warm and welcoming and very supportive environment. So I went to Guilford College and met a lot of other students who claimed to be very spiritual, but didn't connect themselves with any organized religion, having found, I think, some of the similar thoughts that I had, that there were a lot of aspects of the organized religions that they had experienced before that didn't really add to their appreciation or their education, their spiritual education. And somewhere in there, so I thought maybe I'm kind of a Quaker, but I'm not really. I'm just Quaker-ish. I can practice that a little bit. I can believe the things that they believe, but I don't know that I'm really up to that standard. But I didn't call myself a Quaker yet. Then I realized that there was a scholarship available to Quakers going to Guilford College. So I decided, okay, this is pretty good. This is a close enough fit. So on paper, I was willing to say, yeah, oh, Quaker, absolutely. Didn't have a meaning to associate myself with, but nothing about Quakerism that offended me. Quite a things that I liked. I was going to call myself a Quaker. Unfortunately, during this period, I was really still kind of faking it. I didn't know that I was truly tuning into God. I kind of put it down as a default choice. So as often happens, life changed. My father got sick, and day by day, his personality was disappearing into dementia. And after a while, he and my grandmother decided that they needed to move from Louisiana to North Carolina to be closer to my brother and me. Well, as he slipped deeper and deeper into dementia and kind of slid into his second childhood, my brother and I kind of split up, helping him and my grandmother with their daily activities. Somewhere in this process, I found a letter from the Baton Rouge Friends meeting introducing him to his new meeting. Oh boy, I'm going to need to find a meeting. I was definitely not going to be that son to say, gosh, nope, no more meetings. Sorry, Dad, can't get there. It's over. So I looked up and found the Winston-Salem Friends meeting and brought my dad here, found this meeting to be incredibly welcoming, incredibly supportive, and really just a wonderful place to be. So I attended for a long time, really under the auspices of making sure my dad got here. I still wasn't fully jumping in, but it was a good place to be. I involved myself in the thrift shop and a few other efforts, and those were really good. I really appreciated those. The love and the warmth that I received from every single one of the members really buoyed me and really helped me through quite a few difficult times during that period of my life. But essentially, I was still kind of at a pragmatic level within the meeting. I was appreciating the fellowship. I liked doing charitable works with the collaboration of other members, but I still wasn't myself a Quaker. I was just kind of going through the motions and enjoying the pragmatic things that I could get out of the meeting. So, after a number of years, after the Winston-Salem Friends meeting hosted memorials for both my father and my grandmother, I continued attending. I didn't know any good reason why I shouldn't come. It's still very supportive, very, very comfortable for me. I still appreciated all the aspects that I had gotten out of this meeting, so I kept attending. I enjoyed coming to meetings. I thought that I was learning a little bit more about how to worship in the manner of friends. I was still honestly kind of faking it a little bit. Still kind of my default choice, similarly to when I decided that I was going to put on paper that I was a Quaker, but didn't really believe it. Still, it was a good place to be, and it helped me. I just wasn't quite fully. I didn't fully believe that I was a Quaker. Of course, life changed again. My first marriage was failing. My wife was an alcoholic. It wasn't the first problem in our marriage, but it was the first one that I couldn't overcome or ignore. This sent me to a support group called Al-Anon. a support group for those with friends and or family or problem drinkers. Like a lot of 12-step programs, although it's secular, it starts off with the recognition that there is a higher power. Okay, I'm with it. All right, yeah, there's a higher power. I could believe that. That was easy. Okay with that. As I started going through the steps, which were all about introspection, self-reflection, growth, and peeling back the layers of belief and figuring out who I really was inside. One of the many books, gosh, I got a pile of books from Al-Anon. I needed all the help I could. One of the books was a study guide to try to help people through the fourth step, which is where you get into the deep introspection. One specific query stood out to me and kind of turned on its head everything that before that. The question was, how can we determine which is the voice of God? Whoa. Kind of broke my brain when I first read it. No, wait a minute. This is the question. How can you just come out and ask it like that? But I thought about it more and more, and after a bit I realized, like an open book test, I already had the answers. I could work this backwards. I knew that the God that I believed in, the God that led me down the spiritual path that I wanted to go on, that would help me be the person I wanted to be, was loving and kind, and forgiving, most of all patient. The messages that I was hearing in my head, which sometimes could be spiteful or angry or mean or self-deprecating, those weren't God at all. This was a revelation that to me, when I realized it, I thought, part of me thought, well, duh, this is what I've been trying to tell you all along. But still, it was an epiphany for me. I realized I had a way to authenticate the Word of God. This was a major step for me, and made me realize that I could be a Quaker. I didn't have to be the most active, the most devout Quaker. I just had to be on the path. I just had to be seeking. I am just as much as a Quaker as any of the people that have impressed and intimidated me over the years with their energy and their knowledge. Finally, I had arrived at a place where I thought, okay, now I'm not just faking it. I'm actually part of this group. I am a Quaker. And so it's a very happy place for me to be. Honestly, I want to share with all of you that I have two main reasons for sharing this with you this morning. The first reason is kind of a selfish one. I'm one of those people who finds it easier to work things out frequently out loud, whether it's writing it down or literally sharing it to a group of my friends. And let me tell you, this has been helpful. I've dug in and pulled it apart, put it back together, and rearranged it, turned it upside down. This is the message that I've come up with. The second reason is I suspect that many of you have also embarked on a spiritual journey and have probably gone through many feelings and many beliefs about God and spirituality. And maybe if your spiritual journey isn't complete, maybe you see something a little familiar in what I've said, maybe you see something that gives you a little hint about the next steps that you can make or where you can go on your own spiritual journeys. If not, maybe nothing else, and provide a little humor on a Sunday morning. Whichever way you slice it, I really appreciate being here, and although this is the first message I've given, like I said, I've received many messages. This is the first one that I've been brave enough to let out and share with all of you. So thank you very much, and I I wish you all luck on your own spiritual journeys.
Thank you.
Thank you.